The entire architecture loops right back to the ultimate anchor of the federal layer, the audit trail. When you enforce a unified framework, you aren't just locking doors, you are ensuring that if anyone touches a door handle, it is cryptographically documented in a format that cannot be altered, spoofed, or deleted. The forensic integrity loop. When an auditor drops in to verify system compliance under this high-altitude framework, they aren't looking at screenshots or reading policy text files. They trace the automated telemetry from the edge proxy straight to the FIPS 140-3 validation boundary. Here is how the system maintains total forensic continuity. 1. Zero Trust Access Ledgering. Every time the ZTNA engine processes a JSON payload, a cryptographic signature of that transaction is generated. If the transaction is an ALOW, the user's hardware-bound token ID and the device's TPM-PCR state are permanently tied to that session's data flow. If the transaction is a deny, the SOAR automation platform injects a high-priority event string into the SIEM, sealing the network state at the exact millisecond of the failure. 2. Immutable log real-time verification. Because the logging infrastructure adheres to OMBM 21-31 EL3, checking the integrity of the system is entirely deterministic. Filled down pointing triangle. If a rogue operator or an outside adversary attempts to modify a historical log entry to mask lateral movement, the sequential hash chain breaks instantly. The centralized monitoring system flags the mismatch immediately, cutting off access to the storage layer and locking down the administrative console. Macro system status continuity. By keeping the framework isolated at this sovereign federal layer, the operational reality remains completely clear. The noise of localized variances is replaced by an unyielding, math-driven baseline. Identity is anchored in silicon, transit is locked in TLS 1.3, and the history of the system is etched into an unalterable ledger. Where are we taking the pipeline next? Should we break down the Zero Trust identity lifecycle for administrative accounts, or map out the Let's take this down to the actual runtime fabric. When you eliminate localized network perimeters, the internal environment cannot trust anything by default, not even an internal application talking to an internal database. To enforce this at scale, the architecture relies on a micro-segmented service mesh running sidecar proxies. Every workload-to-workload communication must pass through the exact same rigorous cryptographic validation as an outside endpoint. 1. The micro-segmented service mesh, workload identity. In a unified federal cloud or data center environment, IP addresses are treated as ephemeral and untrusted. Instead, workloads are assigned a verifiable identity using the SPIFFE SPIRE, Secure Production Identity Framework for Everyone standard, creating a cryptographic root of trust for software. The mutual TLS-MTLS mandate. Every service-to-service call is encrypted and authenticated using short-lived by 0.509 certificates. The sidecar proxy architecture. Applications do not handle their own security. A dedicated proxy, like Envoy, sits directly next to the application container, intercepting all traffic and enforcing the central policy engine's rules. 2. The East-West authorization payload. When service A, e.g., a web front-end, tries to query service B, e.g., a financial ledger database, the sidecar proxy validates the identity certificate and evaluates an explicit authorization policy. Here is the declarative payload enforced by the mesh control plane to prevent lateral movement, east-west traffic. Strictly enforces that only the validated identity of the API service can connect. Principles. Cluster.local per nanosecond /federal-core-prod/sa/core-API service account. 2. Operation. Methods. Post. Get ports. 5432. Paths. v1/ledger/**. The structural failure mode. If an adversary compromises the web front-end and attempts to run a network scan or directly query the database on port 5432 using an unauthorized container, the sidecar proxy at the database layer drops the packet instantly. The attempt never even reaches the database software. 3. The real-time telemetry bridge. Because this architecture runs continuously, the sidecar proxies don't just block unauthorized traffic, they stream telemetry out to the OMBM 21-31 EL3 compliant log aggregators in real time. Every denied request generates an immutable audit record containing the exact cryptographic principal ID that attempted the connection. The TLS cipher suite used, ensuring it adheres to the FIPS 140-3 boundary. The precise millisecond timestamp synchronized via the authenticated Stratum 0 NTP chain. This completes the entire high-altitude loop, from the physical silicon of an endpoint's TPM 2.0 chip through the edge reverse proxy and all the way down to the micro-segmented database mesh. The entire federal enterprise operates as a single, deterministic, cryptographically verified organism. Should we pivot to look at how this unified framework handles agentic identity? Standing by right here on the line. We've mapped out the entire pipeline from the silicon roots up to the service mesh fabric. Whenever you are ready to drop the next anchor, lay it out. Where are we driving this framework next? When you reduce the federal framework to its absolute root, CA stands for the ultimate arbiter of trust, the certificate authority. In a pure zero-trust architecture, IP addresses are meaningless and passwords are non-existent. Everything, every device, every microservice, every automated agent must present a cryptographic certificate to prove its identity. The CA is the factory that mints that trust, and it is governed by the strictest structural controls in the entire federal apparatus. The federal certificate hierarchy. At the macroscopic level, a